Welcome to Hoko Palizzo's The Writing Life. I'm Stephen Leva. My guest today is Ross Gay. Ross, thank you so much for being with us. It's a pleasure to have you here in Maryland. I hope that we treat you well.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
So I think most people might know that you're the author of many books of poems, including Against Which. That's where I first knew your work, and also Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude, and the author of many books of essays too, including Inciting Joy, and my personal favorite, The Book of Delights. And so I wanted to ask some questions that have to do with how you have formed yourself as a writer. I think many people know you as a gardener, as an advocate for putting your hands in the soil. And I wondered what other kinds of rituals or hermetic practices inform your writing other than gardening. What else kind of comes into the kind of daily life of Ross Gay that informs what he writes?
That's great. It's funny. We were talking a little bit about this earlier that I've just been working on a book about dunking. So that actually, I grew up as an athlete. I still, play things, and I think I like to jump, for instance. That's kind of what this book's about. But anyway, that I feel like that long training of having been an athlete and stuff is deeply influential to the way I think about writing. I mean, in part, and in teaching actually, because my teaching and writing are totally intertwined. And I sometimes I approach my classes a little bit like a coach approaches a practice. I coached for a lot of years too.
I bet you were a great coach.
You think? Yeah. I think I was okay. Like, you know what? I coached with a guy who was brilliant on the X's and O's, and that's not like my abstract thinking chops are not that. Like my spatial thinking. But in terms of like connecting with the kids, I loved it so much. But I also loved the thing of being like, okay, we're going to do 100 of this with your left hand. We're going to do 100 of this with your right hand. We're going to do, go exactly to the, to the hash mark, do this, and I feel like I bring that very much into my writing classes, but also into my writing life. So something like the Book of Delights, which is write an essay about something that delights you every day for a year, write it by hand. All those things to me are sort of, you might call them sort of poetic or writerly approaches, but they're things that you could see a coach being like, okay, just dribble the ball every day for a year for 30 minutes, with your opposite hand or whatever.
Yeah. One of the things I love about that is I think for some readers and some aspiring writers, everything seems so mystical. Everything seems like it's a download from the divine, And some of the best writing advice and my own writing practice is just a reminder that it's practical. It is the layup line. It is the free throws. It is tangible. It's not mystical. The reading experience could be mystical. But the production is quite tangible.
Often, totally. And it's sort of like, it's almost like people have probably said this in beautiful ways. But I'm not gonna. But that by practicing what you're doing, doing repetitions. It feels like that, and whatever the repetitions might be, might be repetitions might be like doing something over and over again, writing 100 sonnets or writing, a bunch of short essays. Or it might be kind of smaller, like looking very hard at all of the verbs in your poem or whatever. Those things, it feels like there's some way that, as you called it, tangible something or others, might be one of the ways into that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we know, like, the priests and the sages are all ahead of us with that, right? They know you pray every day, you do this, you feed the poor, you practice what you preach, and then somehow it opens, right? Or you, which is really a way of saying you open.
That's right.
And I love that. It always reminds me that within that, right, And I'm not talking about like a Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours. You can write 10,000 hours and have 10,000 bad poems, you know. But it reminds me that everybody gets to play. You know, you don't have to be born with some special talent
At all.
You know, you just have to get to the lines, get to the writing, get to the
that's
dribbles. You
That's
know,
it, that's it.
You know, whether you're 5'10" like me or
Yeah.
6'2" like
a
you.
little more. Yeah, totally. That's right.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I was wondering a little bit about your first book, Against Which, and some of the images in Against Which, even among their grief. I think if I can say that, you know, accurately, there's a lot of grief in that book. They're populated with a kind of setting that seems very rural sometimes maybe informed by Youngstown, Ohio, maybe informed by the suburb that you grew up in Philadelphia. But the swagger is very Philly. You know, the landscape is one thing, and then the voice and the verbiage, the syntax feels very Philly swagger, you know. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about those two places for you and how they show up in your aesthetic or in your poems, whether as images or a kind of euphony. What are the ways that both Youngstown and Philadelphia kind of inform your writing?
Love that question. That's a great question, you know, because it's sort of like that being born in Youngstown and then leaving when I was little, you know, being in Northeast Ohio for like the first 5 years of my life, more or less, and then going to right outside of Philadelphia. And then while I was writing those poems, living in Philadelphia. So there are, I mean, you heard it good. I like how you, I feel like, I mean, there are things about Youngstown that, like practical things that show up in the poems for sure. You know, I've never quite been asked that question, and I don't know that I can exactly articulate it, except I can wander around in it a little bit and sort of wonder about what it means to be, you know, like that family having come up from, you know, at least my dad's mother's side coming up from Port Gibson, Mississippi, you know, and the kind of stories around that arrival, and the just something about like folks who work either in the steel mills or GM or as teachers, a kind of like a thick family thing. There's so many things that show up a lot in my writing, and so the things show up, but I don't know exactly how to articulate how they've been made on account of them, except that they absolutely have. I mean, just the fact that on both sides of my family, my mother's from Minnesota, but on my father's side of the family, like there's a lot of, you know, my Aunt Verna and my Aunt Butter were both teachers. It's just like teaching is deep in our family, you know. So there are those things. I don't know. It's a great question. But then, you know, that you noted, like kind of living in proximity to Philly and then to live in Philly. I was at Temple when I was writing, I think, the bulk of that book. That there are sounds and there are like sort of landscapes or cityscapes. You know, Broad Street shows up. Because that's, you know, 3 blocks from where I live. The basketball court where I played, you know, kind of what I think of as like the best basketball of my life. You know, was 6 years right off of, you know, also 3-4 blocks from Broad Street. So those things are they're very present in that book. And it's funny because I'm writing about Duncan again. They're very present in my memory too, because I've been lived there for like 18, 19 years.
I mean, I asked that question somewhat because, you know, for some folks, Philly can be a hard place, you know? But I see, even, and this is definitely something that progresses, I think, through the different things that you've written, such a kind of, for lack of a better term, Midwestern tenderness. You know? You know?
There's something Midwestern about myself.
You know, there's a kind of Midwestern tenderness in the work, but the verve of it, I'm like, oh yeah, so I was always curious about how those things came together.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to read a poem from Against Which?
Yeah.
One that I really love, not only because it has an epigraph from Philip Levine, but I thought about its connection to some of the other work too, and it's a poem called Let Me Be.
Yeah. Yeah. Let Me Be, after Philip Levine. Like a one-armed boomerang whistling through a typhoon's eye, the steamship's blind plow through miles of coal-black, star-flecked sea, like the swollen river's stubborn chew through tons of stone, cars and trees tiny, floating buoys on my shoulders, time enough and everything worn to silty dust. I'm a goddamn krill-bearded blue whale howling a deep-sea love scream, you see. I'm a spaceship singing through a star's stinging heat shroud, its fire gown, my heart so fat and hot, every passing thing joy-singed by this overripe, honey-stuffed juggernaut sweetness. Let me be back to your sunlight-lined lips, your muscled hands, your morning eyes first opening. Let me be a glint of sun dust drifting down your windpipes glisten, lodging in your red, wet blood pumps silken clench, that ruby smooth muscles, every move. Let me be, let me be. Yeah. Those last, Levine has a poem that ends with that repetition, the let me be, and then I'm like, that's such a Yusef Komunyakaa poem.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, it's so. His work means so much to me, and it's like, every once in a while you can hear it, like, whoa, that's one of our parents.
Almost on the verge of saying Khartoum,
I know,
Khartoum, right?
I know. It's so sweet. Oh my God.
It's interesting too, because there's a line in there that talks about being joy singed.
Yeah.
And I know that many of the folks who know your work would say right on brand. Even early in the work. Ross was thinking about how one might be forever joy singed.
Yeah. And even that word singed, it's like, it's not singed implies not just sweet, like not just, it implies, singeing is painful.
Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, neat. I haven't read that poem in years.
Yeah.
I haven't read that poem in years.
Yeah, we return, one of the things that I think that I discovered even just rereading your work is how often you were returning me to poets that I love, whether you're in conversation with them, but also just truths, truths that I had forgotten or I thought I knew. I didn't know how to say what I knew, And I often say, like, tell my students, I think one of poetry's jobs is to return us to our humanity, And I think a poem like that in its singing, in its way that it is undeniable,
And by our humanity, what do you mean?
I mean, I think there's so much of the world that dehumanizes us. That makes us forget that we belong to one another. Magnitude and Bonds. We're going to quote books. And I think that it is not always what we think in terms of the uplifting poem or a certain kind of Pollyannish sort of thing that does that. I think it is deep singing. A deep dedication and attention, to what I think Keats is right about, a kind of truth, a kind of truth and beauty. But, kind of thinking about being joy singed, we were talking earlier about the NBA, about basketball, right? And I know that basketball shows up in your work. I know that you've coached, I know you've written about it, like you were saying before. And I was wondering, if you had to pick an NBA player that could write a good poem, who would it be?
Great question. Do you have one?
I'm tempted to say somebody who I already know as a writer,
Yeah.
like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, if
yeah.
anybody, But I wonder if it might not be someone who is letting their words be few and their actions be many, like Tim Duncan.
Oh, interesting.
You know?
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
What kind of poem would Tim Duncan write?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. It'd be too fundamental. it would be too fundamental.
Everything of Villanelle.
I know. It would be just perfect. You know, I wonder. I love this question. This is like a question that you put up on the internet and because that's it's like a book.
Right.
And actually, I'm going to tell you what your book is.
Okay.
The book is Poems in the Voice of Different. That's it. There's your book. I'm telling you, that's a book. You got to do it. You got to do it.
No.
Yeah, get a student to do it. That's that's a hit. I think, there's something about James Harden I love so much. And I love that he's so innovative. Like he's like changed the rules. Like now you can take like 5 steps. It's just like, or like, the whole like sweeping through thing. He's just really changed the game in these really profound ways. And I don't know if he's going to win a championship.
Right.
So he's one of these, he's just an interesting figure. And I wonder what kind of poems he would make, because it's like so beautiful, his game, so improbable, the things that he can do. And also that it's not like, Tim Duncan, who got a bunch of rings, a handful of rings, and like everything was just kind of crisp.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, that's one. That's one.
He would definitely write with a chip on his shoulder.
Yes, and it would be inventive in ways that it would be hard for us to kind of conceive of. Yeah, and then we'd all be doing it.
Yeah,
we'd all be trying. True. We'd all be trying to do what he did.
Is innovation important for you? Like to search for that in your own work?
I don't know if I think about it as innovation, but trying to. When I was asking you about humanity, like the pleasure to me about writing, period, is to try to be in kind of communion with my wonder, to like be not knowing. And I feel like if you're kind of working with that, there's even, at least a kind of personal innovation, although I wouldn't say that word, but it might be kind of like that. It's revealing oneself to oneself, regularly, ideally, in ways that can be like really tiny and sort of shocking. And that feels interesting to me, like to be unmade in the process of writing a thing,
What do you mean by unmade?
That you started out one thing and you are not that after it,
That definitely sounds like the classroom. You thought you knew.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I love it. I love it too for its curiosity,
right?
Right? The way it centers being curious. If there's always something to discover or to know, one can do that for their whole life.
Yeah.
And not be bereft.
Never. Your whole life. That feels like one of the practices too, and the practices also that sort of like might allow for a different kind of light to come through. The practice of not submitting to the desire to know, in one's writing.
To resist it.
To not, to not submit to the desire or need to know.
Why do you think we are so invested in it? Why do we need to know?
Well, because that's how you get, that's how you eat, So it's like, it's understandable,
right.
But there's like different realms of our lives where it feels like, the ground of, in fact, is that we don't know. Like we don't actually know if the sun's going to come up, or we don't actually know if the weather's going to change such that, the apples will be back on the tree next year.
Right.
And so to maintain that in the process of making things feels, in the process of actually being in relationship and walking around feels important,
Absolutely.
like a lot of people have said before.
Yeah, well, I think maybe one difference might be that some people approach that unknowing, right? And the other side of that is despair. Because I have no certitude, why bother?
Totally.
And I don't see very much despair in the work that you write. There is a kind of expectation, a kind of, for lack of a better word, almost a futurism, a hope in the way that the not knowing will yield something worth knowing
Yeah,
or
yeah,
worth
yeah,
discovering or worth
yeah.
working through.
Yeah.
Um,
And I wonder if that's also an aspect of the humanity. If there is, I mean, even in a poem that's super brokenhearted and super, if there's an element of wonder in the process, if there was an element of wonder in the process of writing the poem, but if there's also implied a kind of wonder that someone might come join you in it. And so that if that not knowing together
yeah.
might be a kind of humanity as well.
Yeah, I love
You
it.
know?
I mean, I think about, people have quoted this often about Baldwin talking about, you think you're alone in the world, you think your pain is singular, and then you read, right?
Yeah,
you join
yeah.
your pain with another person's pain.
That's right.
But we could flip the script on that and say we can join our wonder with another person's wonder.
And I mean, pain is the source of profound wonder, like
Yeah.
just like delight is, and like volleyball. Like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you let it be, it's going to be like the source of wonder. If we look at anything, if we attend to anything with enough precision and patience, it gets wild.
Yeah.
Well,
in that vein, I think one of the things I've loved about Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude is the way that you attend to things that maybe others wouldn't. And those people who know me know I'm a huge nerd, and one of my favorite poems in Catalog of Unabashed Gratitude is Feet. Not only for its tenderness and its attention, but because Power Man and Iron Fist show up in, absolutely.
Cool.
I read that, I said, that's for me. Ross put that in for me. He don't know me, but he wrote it for me.
That was for you. That's great.
But I was wondering if you would read
I'd
that
love
poem
to.
as an example of that kind of attention.
Totally.
And just maybe, talk to us about what inspired that poem.
Yeah. I was just remembering a friend. Is this how it happened? I think I was probably remembering a friend who had died. And then the remembering became the poem. But it's funny because it kind of wanders there. Feet. Friends, mine are ugly feet, the body's common wreckage stuffed into boots. The second toe on the left foot's crooked enough that when a child asks, "What's that?" of it, I can, without flinch or fear of doubt, lie that a cow stepped on it, which maybe makes them fear cows, for which I repent. In love as I am with those philosophical beasts who would never smash my feet nor sneer at them the way my mother does. "We always bought you good shoes, honey," she says. "You can't blame us for those things." And for this and other reasons, I have never indulged in the pleasure of flip-flops, shy or ashamed, digging my toes like 10 tiny ostriches into the sand at the beach with friends who I'm not sure love me, though I don't think Tina loved me. She liked me, I think, but said to me as we sat on lawn chairs beside a pool where I lifeguarded and was meticulous at obscuring from view with a book or towel my screwy friends, "You have pretty feet," in that gaudy cement mixer Levittown accent that sends all the lemurs scaling my ribcage to see. And she actually had pretty feet. And so I took this as a kindness incomparable and probably fell a little bit in love with her for that afternoon, with the weird white streak in her hair and her machine gun chatter and her gums snapping. And so I slid my feet from beneath my Power Man and Iron Fist comic book into the sun, for which they acted like plants, opening their tiny mouths to the food hurtling to them through the solar system. And like plants, you could watch them almost smile, almost say thank you. You could watch them turn colors and be almost emboldened. None of which Tina saw because she was probably digging in her purse or talking about that hottie on the Real World, or yelling at some friend's little sister to put her ass in her trunks, or pouring the crumbs of her Fritos into her thrown open mouth. But do you really think I'm talking to you about my feet? Of course she's dead. Tina was her name, of leukemia. So I heard. Why else would I try sadly to make music of her unremarkable kindness? I am trying, I think, to forgive myself for something I don't know what. But what I do know is that I love the moment when the poet says, "I'm trying to do this," or "I'm trying to do that." Sometimes it's a horseshit trick, but sometimes it's a way by which the poet says, "I wish I could tell you truly of the little factory in my head the smokestacks chuffing, the dandelions and purslane and willows of sweet clover prying through the blacktop. I wish I could tell you how inside is the steady mumble of clank and machines, but mostly I wish I could tell you of the footsteps I hear, more than I can ever count, all of whose gaits I can discern by listening closely, which promptly disappear after being lodged again here, where we started, in the factory where loss makes all things beautiful grow.
Thank you so much,
You're
Ross.
welcome.
What did it feel like to return to that poem? I'm sure you've returned to it before.
Yeah, I have. I mean, it's been around. It's funny. So that book's 10 years old this year. One thing that I love to say, there's that moment where I say, maybe it's a trick. Sometimes in some writers it's a trick. A friend of mine who's a poet was like, at one point was like, I think when you do it might be a trick.
You write about that in the essays, right?
Yeah, so I always remember that. But I am moved by the kind of that end of the kind of turn in the poem. Like there's two moments where it feels like there's these kind of theories about poetry that are happening, and one is, of course she's dead. Why else would I try sadly to make music of her unremarkable kindness? There's something about that. And then the factory where loss makes all things beautiful grow. Those feel both like kinds of like almost definitions of poetry or something, that I just noticed that time.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, and I love that we get to participate in that theorizing with you, build a little community, and see what we know and what we don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Ross, it's so wonderful to be here with you. Thank you so much for being here with Joko Pulitzo.
You're welcome. I'm glad. I had fun talking with you. Yeah, it's great.
I did as well. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Joko Pulitzo's The Writing Life.